Good morning, everybody. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am delighted to be here with you, and with you, and with you, and with you for the Sunday morning Science of Mind class. Some of you are like, why does she always say the Sunday morning Science of Mind class? Like, we know it's Sunday, and we know it's the Science of Mind class. Well, I am reminding myself that it is Sunday. And we often have people who have just jumped in for the first time and they're not quite sure what's going on here. So here at CSLDallas, we do this class every Sunday morning to dive a little bit more deeply into the Science of Mind textbook written by the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, Ernest Holmes. So I invite you to just take a deep breath with me and breathe it out or cough it out as I'm getting ready to do. So that this moment is fresh and new and we are ready to dive in to expansion, expanding our hearts, expanding our minds, and expanding our commitment to live the spiritual principles in our daily lives. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. I'm going to start today with page 104, the subchapter, Immortality. We have been in chapter 5, which is titled Body, for a few weeks, and we will probably finish it up next week. So on page 104, the subtitle Immortality, I will read as I'm reading, take it in, think about any examples of how the understanding of this material matches your understanding or not, and any questions you have, because we'll take some time in just a few minutes to open to questions and comments and examples. That means you all talking, not Tracy. So, Immortality, middle of page 104. Suppose we should be able to view the world not as we do now from one plane, but from 10 different planes. What would happen? We should certainly see 10 times as much as we do now. The present hypothesis of science is that ether is more solid than matter. And this means that there could be a form within the very form that one's body now occupies in space. There might be innumerable bodies, each within the other, and each would be just as real as the one we now think we occupy. The universe as we see it is not even a fractional part of the universe that actually is. Quote, "Eye hath not seen," etc., because it sees only on one plane and only in one part. From the standpoint of immortality, we may have a body within a body to infinity. When this physical body is rendered useless and is no longer a fit instrument through which to function, another one may be already here. I'm going to stop there for a minute because I want to put some context around this. So if you've been with us in recent weeks, you know that this chapter is called Body, but we're not talking about the human body. We are talking about whatever form occurs. So body is the result of an intention set or a thought that has been held, and we are talking at a universal level a spiritual level, the level of full nature. So we're not having this conversation primarily from the human body standpoint. Even though in this part of the chapter with immortality, Ernest Holmes, as you heard in those two paragraphs, allows us to use our human body as a frame of reference. Because in the conversation around immortality, we are talking about the application of immortality to human life. But reminder, up until this point in this chapter, we've been really careful to remember that the word body, when we're talking about spiritual principle, is really the effect. So we've already talked about cause and effect. We've already talked about some other aspects of how form comes to be. So, of course, as we get near the end of the chapter, Ernest Holmes would be like, yeah, let's confuse them. Let's let them talk about the human experience now. So, in these first two paragraphs, Ernest Holmes reminds us that all we know is kind of all we experienced or know right now. And so he's using this idea of if something is eternal, there is immortality. It is not the physical body that is immortal. So when this body dies or is not useful anymore, what did he write? When this physical body is rendered useless and is no longer a fit instrument through which to function, for all we know, another form will be the house for our soul, for our unique individuation of expression. Okay, have I completely lost you?
No, that makes
perfect
sense.
With me?
And we hope it's true.
And so if you think about it, so last week we were on the section right before this was unity and multiplicity, and that there really is only one. There is one that encompasses all, but we still see the individuation. So each one of us is a part of the multiplicity, but we all come from the same source and we all have the same stuff that we're made of, but we are individual expressions of that soul stuff or those elements that create life. Just like when I went to Trader Joe's earlier this week, a few days ago, and I spent a whole lot of money on flowers and greenery, and all of those flowers are different, but they're all flowers, and they are all part of the wholeness of all of life. They're an individual expression of life. So sometimes it's easy if it gets confusing around thinking about people. Sometimes it's easy to go to, oh, I wouldn't expect the garden to have only one type of flower. Or if I were growing vegetables to feed my family and had a small farm, or just herbs and vegetables that I was growing on my own property, I wouldn't grow only one tomato. I would grow, even if I grew a whole patch of tomatoes, they wouldn't all be exactly the same, right? They would ripen at different times. Some would have a little brown on them. Some would be green at different places. So I could grab 10 of those tomatoes and they each would be individual tomatoes. But if I were growing all herbs and vegetables to feed my family, then I would grow many different kinds. So that concept of unity and multiplicity is a little tricky for some people. But if you get confused with people, think of plants or flowers or the makeup of a forest, that you have different kinds of trees, you have different animals that all are supporting each other in some way to create what we call a forest, a healthy forest. So, if we're there and that's all beginning to make a little bit of sense of how it's all connected, and then we get today to immortality, I'm going to reread those first two paragraphs, and then we're going to go to your comments, your examples, and your questions if you have any. Page 104 in the middle, immortality. Suppose we should be able to view the world not as we do now from one plane, but from 10 different planes. What would happen? We should certainly see 10 times as much as we do now. The present hypothesis of science is that ether is more solid than matter. And this means that there could be a form within the very form that one's body now occupies in space. There might be innumerable bodies, each within the other, and each would be just as real as the one we now think we occupy. The universe as we see it is not even a fractional part of the universe that actually is, because it sees only on one plane and only in one part. From the standpoint of immortality, we may have a body within a body to infinity. When this physical body is rendered useless and is no longer a fit instrument through which to function, another one may be already there. And before we go to comments and questions, I just want to read the glossary definition of immortality. Immortality is the deathless principle of being in all people. For a study of this subject, see chapter 20.
Okay.
We're on
We'll see that
chapter
later.
5.
Okay, we'll get there.
So that is your kind of warning that when we get to chapter 23, the whole chapter is on immortality. But for now, immortality is the deathless principle of being in all people. And that's what we're talking about. So there are many ways that you can participate in this conversation. Ryan, why don't you give us some instructions?
Absolutely, and good morning to you, Dr. Tracy. And
Good
what
morning.
a fun, fascinating topic we have for everyone today. And as you had mentioned, this is a conversation, so we invite you to ask your questions and have your comments. And for the folks here in the room, we have a microphone, and that way the people online can hear you. And I have the amazing Patrick here to help me today with this. And also, I haven't said it lately, but our iconic Richard is always on the cameras, and we love and appreciate that he's here helping.
Okay, Richard.
Yay, Richard, that's right. And for the folks here in the room, if you want to just raise your hand, we'll give you a microphone. And welcome to all those that are joining us online via Zoom and Facebook all around the globe. We're so glad that you're in community with us today. And you can participate too. If you're in the Zoom room with us, go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon, and or you can put your questions and comments in the chat, and we can bring that into the room. As well as that goes the same for those who are on Facebook Live. You can put your questions and comments into the chat, and I'll bring those into the room as well. And I always like to mention that I keep those chats anonymous, That way we continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So, immortality. I haven't seen anybody raise their hand yet because I think they're gnawing on it. But it looks like we have Willie here in the room, so we'll go to you first.
Hi, I'm Willie. It sounds like a body within a body within a body is holographic.
Yes.
Like a hologram. But my confusion came when I thought about consciousness. And we're on this plane, and we're having this experience. My brain goes on tilt when I think about how you can be conscious here, and consciousness is present everywhere, but you don't know about the consciousness over there.
Right.
So how does that happen?
The way you just described it.
Well, goodness.
So I will say more about that.
Okay.
So, yes, we focus a lot on our consciousness, the consciousness that we have, that we are using to navigate the life that we are living. So our individual consciousness is connected to the life experience we are having. Remember, well, there's so many different places where either Ernest Holmes, or we can go to the Christian Bible, or we can go to the Quran and find references that remind us that there is the all, right? So that would relate to your consciousness is everywhere.
Yes.
But we are not, we have access to all consciousness, but my individual consciousness is not all consciousness everywhere. So the
But
quote,
we've heard of people who can tap into those other consciousnesses.
we have heard of that,
Yes.
and what does Ernest Holmes say about?
Well, I'm not sure.
So in Science Mind, right, one of the reasons we don't refute different experiences, but we can't codify them and predict them and in a scientific way prove them. So that was it last week or the week before, we were talking about pieces that got pulled from the original Science of Mind.
Right.
So things around reincarnation, things around psychic phenomena, things around that experience. But even still, in the version we use, there's reference to there is a human ability for some people to do that.
To tap into it.
Right. And we don't really have an opinion about it, and we don't teach it as a need or a necessary thing for us to be able to tap into the greater consciousness for how we choose to live our lives and what we choose to do.
And then it makes sense when this body dies in this experience, the other body is already there.
Whatever that form is. And that it's so funny because, you know, when I read this chapter, even now, even today, full true confession, I get a little irritated with Ernest Holmes here because up until this point in the 4 introductory chapters and in the 4 chapters before this, he has worked so hard to separate us from this human body. And then in these 4 paragraphs, he takes us right back there, and then kind of a spoiler alert, you know, then he kind of moves back away from it. But then he comes back to it in chapter 23, and there's a whole chapter that makes sense. So I think this is providing the bridge to the next chapter, because the next chapter is man's relationship in the spiritual universe, the human relationship in the spiritual universe. So he is starting to build a bridge from all we've been talking about is the universal principle, the universal nature, the spiritual law and how it works regardless of humanity. And then without telling us, he starts bringing in the human questions and the human body as an example. But it irritates me a little bit because I don't think it's bridged well. So now we start talking about, oh, well, if I'm immortal. The other thing related to this, the body within the body within the body within the body, I have to pick up the book because I am not irritated. I am not irritated. I am not irritated. Okay, so the present hypothesis of science is blah, 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 blah. And this means that there, and in italics he writes, this means that there could be a form within the very form that is one's body now. So I think that's the other reason I get a little irritated, because he's using this hypothesis and saying it could be that way, but we don't really know. But just he's getting us to think about, what if that were true? And if you've been in Science of Mind any length of time, and you've been through the whole book, either in classes or in the 4 years it takes for us to go through the book on Sunday mornings, then what also would come to mind for many people is the reason we don't teach reincarnation is because Ernest Holmes writes something like, how arrogant is that you would think you would come back in a human body, like the human body is the best thing that it could be. So you would be reincarnating as a human or as a dog or a cat or some form that you know from your current human experience. There could be a gazillion, million, trillion different ways that your consciousness can attach to some other form.
Right.
So when I read, it could be that you have a body within the body, within the body, within the body.
But it doesn't necessarily have to match this body.
Right. It could be a different form.
Right.
It will be a form that we won't have any idea of until we're having the experience.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't remember that this irritated me until I started talking about it.
It clearly does.
What's your name?
My name is Ross. I have something for Lily. I think it always strikes me as hilarious. Are we who we think we are? Okay, so the current research, it was not even current, it's old research now, it's been verified over and over again in the field of psychology, is less than 2% of our behavior is volition. Consciousness only intervenes in less than 2% of what we do. Who are we really then? Right. So there's all these other things going on inside of us that make up 98% of who we are. We don't know what that is.
We're in the discovery all the time. So one of the reasons many people say they love studying and practicing science of mind is because it's not like some belief systems where you memorize these things and then it's always going to, it's like all of us will memorize it and recite it and experience it the same way, or the right and the wrong. What we teach is really that we do encourage people to be conscious and aware. Let me not use the word conscious for that because of what you said. That we will be aware and intentional about what thoughts we program into our minds because we know that it is the subconscious thoughts that are driving our actions all the time in our human experience. So the reason that we teach affirmations, the reason that we are clear in spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer about what we are saying and that we are saying it in the first person is because we really are programming our mind, our brain to match the consciousness that we know is in alignment with the way spiritual law works. So, yes, the more that we practice,
Exactly.
the more that we are intentional about it, the more that we are choosing, put a pin in choosing,
Yes.
the more that we are choosing our overall atmosphere and the direction that we want the spiritual energy to show up in our lives, the more that we are still doing the human thing. We are unconscious, but we programmed our subconscious to actually make certain choices and drive us in a direction that's what the pattern becomes.
That 2% of volition can be extraordinarily powerful, and you just said it.
Yes.
It can set things in motion that go automatic again and we don't think about because we've dealt with them effectively. And our ability to function in reality is dramatically enhanced because of the decisions we made in that 2%.
Yes. So the motto for that so many people connect, the change your thinking, change your life. It's not just changing your thinking on the surface level. It's not just, I'm going to think about something different today. It is the change my thinking at the root level so that my thinking is directing my behavior. A few of you have heard me talk about kind of a model that I use to remind me of how it works, like our thoughts and our feelings. Um, we teach change your thinking, change your life, but thoughts and feelings in the human experience are kind of equal, like at the beginning or at the core. Sometimes I think about something and then I feel a certain way about it. But often in my human experience, I feel a certain way and then I go, what thoughts are related to making me feel that way? So we can have thoughts and feelings and they reflect our beliefs. And our beliefs drive our behavior. And our behavior, when we start repeating any kind of behavior over and over, that creates habits, or our default, but our habits. And our habits then actually define our life experience. So when we say change your thinking and change your life, sometimes people don't understand. We're saying examine your beliefs, watch how your beliefs are driving your behavior. So if you want to change your behavior, you're going to have to change your beliefs and have different thoughts and feelings. And you definitely are going to change your habits. If you change your beliefs, they're going to drive different behavior. Your habits are going to be different. And then guess what? Your life is different. You've changed your life. But it's not a one-step process. I'm just going to change the way I think today, and tomorrow my life is going to be different. At least not for an extended period of time. Ryan, do we have anybody online? Not yet.
Well, let me ask another question. We're talking about continued existence after this body fails.
Yes. After this body, yes. Okay.
Okay. It's no longer a useful tool. Is it a worthy endeavor to pursue this? And I really ask that question seriously, and I wrestle with it myself.
Is it a worthy endeavor to pursue what? This work of,
I know this work is worth it. It's more along the lines of, we can't know what it is. If anything exists after this, it's going to surprise the hell out of us. Or delight us, or something. It's going to be so different. But we don't have a clue what it is.
yes.
And so why bother to think about it? I can't stop myself from thinking about it. But going, why do I bother?
So, I love that question. Thank you, Patrick, for managing the microphone. So, I know that one of the things we in Science of Mind, in Centers for Spiritual Living, but everyone who studies Science of Mind, whether they are part of CSL or not, one of the things that comes up a number of times in the teaching is that we're not pursuing living a certain way to get rewarded after this body no longer serves us. So many people are raised in religious traditions of do these things now this particular way so that you can earn your place in heaven or hell. Like whatever you do now is about earning something later. Because we believe in the immortality, eternality, and continuity of each individuation, we know that however I am living now is how I'm going to be living beyond this body. Like if I am incorporating universal spiritual principles now, I'm going to be doing that. It's a continuation, just in a different form. So it won't necessarily, might not be thinking about it the same way that in this human body I've been kind of socialized to be logical and analytical and boom, 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 boom. It might not be that because I don't know what form it's going to take. But if the consciousness goes with me, then how I'm living now is how I'll be living, not in terms of the street I live on and the car I drive and all of that, but the experience of life. I am committed to intentionally live my life in alignment with spiritual principles so that I have a fabulous experience, and I contribute to a world that works for everyone, create a life that works for me. I'm doing both because I actually believe that we have the capability to create heaven on earth. There is no heaven. There is no pie in the sky after you die, experience, right? And so I'm having that experience here, trusting that my consciousness is going to go with me wherever I go, in whatever form I go. So if I'm about creating that now, I'll be about creating that. If I am about having all kinds of challenges and problems and accepting that as that's what's supposed to be, that's what the human life is, pain and suffering, then I'm going to have pain and suffering whatever happens after this body goes away. So we're not living or pursuing a place or experience after death. We are pursuing living our best life.
And that's part of the motivation, thinking something comes next?
No. The motivation isn't something comes next. The motivation is I am an eternal soul and I have no beginning or end. So I am living my eternal life experience right now in the best way that I know how. And whatever I am doing in any other experience, I will be living it in alignment with spiritual law,
I get that.
and I will have the best life I can possibly have in whatever form that is, in whatever environment that is, in whatever socialization that is, whatever galaxy that is. It doesn't matter, because I am committed to the habits and the belief that I am eternal. I am eternal. My physical body is not, but I am that I am.
Here's really the question.
And then we're going to go to Gordon.
Okay, I'll be quick. Microphone, please.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Oh, that's okay.
he needs the microphone though.
Oh.
For many decades, about 20 times a day, I ask that question. What's next? I keep getting the same non-answer. And I said, why am I bothering? And then I talk to other people, and they're bothering too, as if they can know something.
Stop
I'm going-
bothering.
And I haven't found anyone who was credible to me and really didn't know anything. Although they might have been, and I just couldn't believe them. But you get what I'm going after here?
Yeah, stop bothering. Do not waste your time or energy thinking about what's next. You said it. I can't plan it. I don't know what it's going to be. So live your best life.
I'm doing that, and it's constant all the time. I think I'm doing pretty well with my life. I know the disciplines I've engaged in over a long time. And, of course, I'm here, which means something. But now I'm in a situation of I'm getting closer and closer to when this body's going to fail, and now it really haunts me.
So give Patrick the microphone, because really, how many of you have ever seen the Bob Newhart skit? That you know what I'm talking about without me saying, just stop it, right? And if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and search Bob Newhart, stop it. And in 5 minutes, he's like, we can cure whatever problem or challenge you're having. That may or may not be true. But in this case, you're letting it haunt you, to use your words. That means you're allowing yourself to go back to it. And Bob Newhart knows the answer. Just stop it. Because you already know it's a useless activity when you could be enjoying and growing and expanding and evolving in this current form.
I'm doing both. And being haunted.
Okay. You can choose that. I don't affirm that for you, but it is your choice.
Well,
And say your name for...
my name is Gordon. A much wiser man than me said, let the dead bury the dead. That tells to me, control what we control, and that's today. And I'm learning every day to let the past go and not worry about the future. A couple of quick questions. What's his name? The Unity, the Spiritual Economics, Butterworth. He has a couple of great points, and one of them might be a little contrary to what we're talking about right now. One of them, he says, if you hold the spiritual thoughts on a high plane, in other words, your substance doesn't come from company, country, job, it comes from God, that not only will you experience the benefits of that, but you won't have to go through or experience the negatives of whatever else seems to be going on. That somehow if the stock market's going horrible, or you will be protected. Now that's a powerful statement, and I think that has a lot of truth to it. But the other thing that I've read a lot is the idea that, as far as immortality, I believe that our bodies, we have the capability of healing ourselves. That we really do have a spiritual body inside our material body. And all these demonstrations that people hear and in our group, the whole idea of it is that past religions got away from healing. Past religions think, like you said, do things today so that you can go to a better place tomorrow. Our religion specifically says this is a scientific way. And if you buy into that, and if you accept, and you know that as strong as some of our leaders know that, that's the only way that our body seemingly goes from a withered hand to a perfect hand. I'm open to ideas and learning more, but I mean, if you grasp that, there's a lot of the spiritual leaders that say, why do we say that our bodies can't replenish themselves?
Good stuff, Gordon. Thank you so much. So a couple of things. One, well, let me start there, and then I may forget the one from Butterworth, but let me start there. So Ernest Holmes described science of mind as a teaching and healing order, that the goal and the intention was to understand these universal spiritual principles that are taught and practiced across many of the major religions or spiritual belief systems. And our core beliefs are built on what are the common messages and laws that are taught across or lay the foundation underneath so many different practices. And that's why we are able to serve and learn from both many different spiritual paths. But Ernest Holmes was very clear that when using these principles, there is a type of healing that happens. And we often talk about it as both, it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, being in alignment. That does not refute that our physical body is not immortal or eternal. So there is death, and there is pain, and there is, there is that the body dies or the body ends, but we are eternal. So that's the one piece, and I don't think we focus on healing quite enough. I think people forget, or they think about, oh, well, yeah, I've got this big financial problem, and so that got healed. But at that deeper level of bringing the equilibrium between mental, physical, emotional, and the healing has to happen on the spiritual level for it to be long-term. So yes to that. And yes, I knew if I started talking about one, I'd forget the other. So what did you say about Butterworth?
That the environment didn't have the control over you that you think it would.
Right, and so we create the atmosphere. We are not defined by the atmosphere or the things that happen. Things happen, conditions happen, but we are not defined by them. And so that's at the core of our teaching as well. So many of you have heard me say, because it seems like I say it all the time, that too often people think, oh, well, I'll learn these spiritual principles, and guess what? Then I will never have a problem in my life ever again because I'm so spiritual. I am protected. I am guarded. Yeah, no. Our spiritual practices are designed to help us navigate the human conditions because we do not have control over everything that happens in our lives or in our environment. But what we do have control of is how we respond to it, how we position it, and how we navigate through it using spiritual law as a guide. And I just looked at the clock and our time is really up. So I'm going to have to take a breath there. And next, put a marker here. And next week we will start at the middle of Immortality near the end of page 104. If we have anybody who's here for the first time, we have Faye ready to answer any questions and to give you a gift from CSLDallas, so she'll be standing right next to the iconic Richard, so that if anyone needs, they will know who she is. And Ryan,
Yes.
what's going on here that people need to know about?
I wanted to share a few quick things, just real quick. So in this conversation, it's really good segue into this because we are going to be hosting a class starting May 2nd. It's Universal Spiritual Practices and Principles. And it's a foundational course that helps to just go over I believe there's 10 universal laws. It helps you to go over, learn what these universal laws and how they're applying to your life now and how you can consciously apply them to your life. And it's led over a course of 5 weeks, and Dr. Petra will be leading that course. And for those who are going to be joining us next week, we have the wonderful and fabulous Jamie Lula, who's going to be in the house.
Yay.
If you haven't heard his music, I encourage you to go out to YouTube and check him out. And he'll be doing a wonderful concert here on Saturday the 27th. And then he'll be in the house with us for the Sunday celebration, which is going to be happening on the 28th. And if that wasn't enough, he's got a awesome, amazing forgiveness workshop that he'll be doing right after that. So it's going to be a wonderful weekend. I highly encourage you to come. And if you're online, the workshop and our live stream on Sunday will be available online. But if you do live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, please come for the concert. It's going to be off the chain.
Yes, it is. And please join us in 25 or 30 minutes for this morning's Sunday celebration service. We've got 2 amazing speakers, Georgianne Moss and Ryan Brown.
Yay.
See everybody next week. Have a good week.